So let's talk about TMNT Shredder's Revenge. Right off the bat, this game is like a 5 out of 10 for me. But you know, if the art style tickles your nostalgia bone a little bit too well for a 5 out of 10, then I suppose you could give it a 7 out of 10. But many sites that have rated this game rated it higher than Streets 4 when it came out, with scores for TMNT being the high 8s to the 10 out of 10s, and Streets 4 getting like 6s and 7s. And that tells me that these guys are less interested in reviewing this content and more interested in ensuring sales for this game and keeping a potentially angry fan base at bay. I'm a fan of TMNT, I want to see it do well, but it just feels like these are just people who are afraid of people. It also tells me just how much they underappreciated Streets 4, because that game was clearly made for people who love brawling games, and this game was either made for casuals or people who are just looking for a nostalgia trip down the TMNT road. This isn't going to be a full review of the game, but I just have to tell you guys that if you have Streets 4 in your library, you can honestly live without TMNT. And if you do buy TMNT at full price, you're probably going to end up regretting getting it. I'm not on a campaign to trash TMNT, but the record has to be set straight here. So let's start with the team behind this game, Tribute Games, and a familiar face, Dotemu. Tribute Games hasn't done anything I found that was really noteworthy other than, these guys are the developers and, it says it all, it's a tribute. So, Dotemu now, they were the publisher for Streets 4. So that gave me really high hopes going into TMNT. But in the end, it just shows how much weight was really being pulled by the developers of the game, Lizard Cube and Guard Crush Games for Streets 4. So Streets of Rage 4, it set the standard for what we should expect in a modern brawler today. Characters with different playstyles and fun playstyles, memorable stages, less talking and more punching, cool and satisfying visual and sound effects, a good balance of on-screen objects, a meaningful combo counter, keeping the action on screen instead of off-screen, good music, and good bosses. And I honestly believe Streets 4 excels in all of these, and in my opinion, it is a 10 out of 10 game. It really is a 10 out of 10 game. Now when I look at TMNT Shredder's Revenge, we have some different playable characters, but they all have very similar playstyles. The stages are pretty forgettable. There's lots of repetitive talking and a really low skill ceiling. You're just button mashing in terms of like what you're actually doing. The visual and sound effects, they're not bad. They just feel that they're a little bit too arcadey and lack innovation. And I understand that can be a style choice, so I'm not going to harp on that too much. The balance of things on screen, they can get out of control, especially in multiplayer. There's either too many things on screen at once, or there's just not enough to go around. Difficulty does have a small effect on this, but in general, it just doesn't feel like that these guys have struck the balance of how many things should be on screen. In Streets 4, the combo counter was all in your face because you knew it had something to do with the game. It built your score up, gave you extra lives, and made the game really satisfying and fun. This game felt like it had to add a combo counter and just kind of threw up in the corner there, and it doesn't do anything at all. The action does a pretty good job of staying on screen when it starts on screen, but sometimes enemies kind of get out of the way, they like jump off screen and you have to wait a while for them to come back. It's a little annoying, but it's not destroying the game by any means. The music also in this game isn't my favorite, but music is entirely subjective. But what Streets did with this is they released a new soundtrack, a completely original soundtrack for Streets 4, but you also have the option of playing with the retro music from the old game. So when it comes to something as subjective as music, it's nice to see them put an effort in actually allowing you to have a little bit of decision making. I don't think that makes or breaks a game at all. I really don't. But with this kind of game, I think it's nice to have that option. When it comes to TMNT, I can really only think of 2 bosses that I found that were particularly memorable, and more or less not for the best reasons. And the rest just sort of blend in with the background, which you gotta understand that any game where things are just blending in, everything's just kind of, feeling same over time, it gets boring. And boring is like stage 4 cancer for a video game, with only 5 days to live, but in my case, even less. Some quick positives though, as a side note, this game has a team attack system in the multiplayer, and it's pretty good. I honestly think it is. My only problem with it is just how often it happens on its own. You're just mashing square, your friend sends an enemy flying at you and you just hit it without really even thinking about it. It just kind of happens. I think it would be more satisfying and maybe a bit more innovative for a game called TMNT, where it's these brothers who are working together a lot, to actually set this sort of thing up. So you have to get in the mind of your partners as well as, you know, or just have good communication skills. And I think that would make it it would carve out a niche for itself and make it a little bit more interesting. It's just a little bit too automatic for my taste. This game also has a health sharing system, and I think that works pretty well. But with that though, there are tons of other things that I could nitpick at this game for. But you know, for the sake of this not going on forever or sounding like someone who's too entitled, let's just say that when it comes to the worst of those things, I played TMNT, the game that released in 2003. And there is one noteworthy issue with that game that any future TMNT game of that brand should avoid like the plague. And if they don't want to get branded by that problem, and this one doesn't.
Teamwork is the way. Teamwork is the way. Teamwork is the way.
And you know, I honestly dread the idea of playing through this game again. And there's really no real incentive to, because all the characters kind of feel the same. It's got this weird RPG element. And by stage 8, I'm tuning out. And that leaves like 7 stages to go. That's a problem. So to put that in perspective, when I play Streets 4, I end up wishing for more. I wish there were more stages to play. There was more to do. I want to see what more they can create. But when I play TMNT, I'm just waiting for it to end. So if you're thinking about picking up this game, I recommend you just pick up Streets 4 instead. And if you already have it, then go pick up the DLC. You get 3 more characters for the campaign and a bunch of customizable new movesets for every character already in Streets 4 and a new game mode. But even so, if you're really determined to play TMNT, then let me suggest that you do a quick playthrough of Streets 4 on your own. Or with a friend before you go and do it. It doesn't really matter. And when you play TMNT afterwards, with a friend or by yourself, but honestly, you should probably play this game with a friend, you will understand why Streets 4 is my go-to brawler, and why TMNT will just collect dust. That's all I have to say about it. Maybe in the future I'll do a playthrough of this game, or a more detailed review of this game, so we can really go into depth on what's working for this game and just what isn't. But that's all I have to say about it. Well, that is, except for the sentimental fact, you know, this is a TMNT game that all of us would have wished we had when we were kids, and it's selfish just to rip on it for not being as good as a game that came up before and honestly had a little bit more ambition. When I started playing this game, it came out just before Father's Day, and it opened up a great opportunity to play some games with my young son and daughter. And it was so special, taking these things that we wanted as kids and getting to pass it on to the next generation. It almost feels like giving them a gift. Like, it's true what they say, giving something just feels so much better than getting something. And when you get to give the gift you always wanted when you were a kid to your daughter and seeing her eyes light up, dude, it just brings you to tears. And that's why, despite everything else, on Father's Day, I had a blast sitting down with my 2 kids, plugging in our controllers and having a blast playing Streets of Rage 4. So yeah, we're playing Sonic Origins tomorrow. See you later, alligators. Goodbye!